A few months ago, I went with my boyfriend at the time to a concert in Atlantic City in this big arena. It was actually Smash Mouth, Uncle Kracker, Sugar Ray, and Blues Traveler, because I am relevant. Smash Mouth was the first group to come out. They start their set, and no sooner do they start their set when in the row next to us there is this guy, probably early 20s, wearing this striped polo shirt and khakis. And he gets out into the aisle and he just starts twerking like he has been waiting his whole life for this moment. He puts his butt in the face of the middle-aged couple in front of us, and the husband doesn't really know what to do while the wife is shaking her fist at him. At some point, one of the guys who was sitting in front of this guy gets up and calls him some kind of horrible name, and the girl that the twerking guy is with goes over to the guy who called him the name and starts punching him, and this kid is still twerking the whole time. And then the guy who gets punched goes and gets security, and security comes and escorts this girl and twerking guy out of the theater. And all of this happens, you know, before the first group has finished their second song. I mean, they didn't even get to Walking on the Sun, which seems like a real shame.
So I recently took a trip to Iceland, and when we were in northern Iceland we decided to take a sailing trip out to see if we could see some whales. When we got out into the ocean, which was about like 30 miles from the Arctic Circle, there was a smaller boat, probably no bigger than the size of like your average rowing boat, and there were a couple of people in it. We waited around for a while, and then out of nowhere we could see the spout in the distance, a spout of water. And every few minutes the spout would get closer and closer until someone suddenly shouted, "It's a blue whale!" Everything fell silent until out of nowhere this heaving mass appears out of the water in front of this tiny rowboat. A blue freaking whale, the world's biggest animal, sitting no more than like 2 meters away from this tiny boat, and it just sat there for a couple of seconds until it went underwater again. I cried because...
So one time I was at this greenhouse, and it's 2 floors, and the bottom floor it's like shops and a market and stuff, and the second floor is where the greenhouse is. Connecting these 2 floors there is this kind of pedway thing, you know, in airports, that thing that you just stand on that gets you place to place. That's what is there, but it's at like the slightest incline, so it does eventually get you to the second floor. You just have to wait forever. And so I'm going up the one that takes you up, and I look to my right, and on the one that you would take down is this older woman, and she is like fighting all the forces of nature to get up this down pedway thing. I don't think that she knew that it doesn't take you up, and I don't think she understood why she wasn't really getting anywhere. We slowly passed each other because it moved so slowly, and I was like, oh, something's not gonna go well here. Of course, like as soon as we meet, she falls. She does fall. Then I'm struck by like bystander syndrome, and I just watch her as she's on her stomach passing me, like just laying there, like she at this point she's just given up. I was just like, God, I should help her, but I learned from her that I can't go down the up one because the same thing's gonna happen to me. I just waited. 2 other people went to help her. She's fine now, I'm sure. She's probably living a life. But I couldn't believe, A, that she had tried so hard for so long and then just gave up. And then B, I couldn't believe what a jerk I am.
So one time, me and a friend of mine were leaving a nightclub. It was quite late and we were a bit drunk. We were going to partake in the English tradition of going to ingest a kebab. We approached the kebab establishment, and this fella came running out of the front door, like flat out legging it, and he ran straight across the road without looking and kicked a guy in the head who was lying on the floor like he was taking a penalty. Now I was flabbergasted by this. The process of thought in my drunken mind was like, why is that guy running so fast? Why is that guy lying on the floor? Why is that guy kicking that guy in the head? And I turned to my friend to sort of go, huh? And he was gone. And I looked back, and he was already sort of standing over the guy who was lying on the floor, pushing people away who were trying to attack him. You know, in the time that it had taken me to process what was actually happening and realise what the situation was, my mate had already acted like on instinct, without thinking. He'd gone to try and rescue this guy who was getting his head kicked in. And that was when I realised that my mate was like a superhero.
So I went to high school at an all-girls Catholic school. And for people who have been to Catholic school, you know that it's very important that you get to school on time. The nuns are not happy when you don't get to school on time. So one morning, for some reason or other, my carpool and I were running late. And we live about 20 minutes away from the school because it wasn't in the best part of town. And we were stopped at this stoplight when this woman runs out into the street into oncoming traffic. And I was like, "What are you doing, lady?" There were semi-trucks and taxis and all other manner of vehicles speeding through the street, and she was gonna get hit by one of them. Luckily, a man was following her into the street, and I was like, "Oh, good. This guy's gonna grab her, take her back to the sidewalk, make sure she's okay." And it wasn't until he started punching her and trying to grab her bag that I realized, no, this man wasn't a good Samaritan. He was a mugger, and she was running into the street to get away from him. 16-year-old Kaylee did not react well to this situation. I told my carpool that she needed to unlock the doors and get out of the car because clearly we would have physically been able to do something about the situation. And when she told me to call the police, I said I needed to call my mother. My mom would have been very useful in this situation. As I'm panicking uselessly in my car, this black SUV suddenly screeches to a halt in the middle of the street, and this man in this black business suit with the Bluetooth still attached to his ear jumps out of the car, grabs the mugger, and starts beating him down in the middle of the street. All the while, the light is still red. When the mugger realizes he doesn't really stand a chance, he breaks away from this business guy and starts running towards my car, and before I could have another useless panic attack, this guy runs up from behind my car, tackles the mugger to the ground, and starts beating him until he's unconscious in the middle of the street. And then the light turned green, and I drove to school.
And collab channels that have always stuck with me over the years. What were your initial goals for the project, and do you have any new goals? My main initial goals were 1. Connect basic storytelling to the YouTube community. 2. Start